Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, Tiger Tank 1-2, how you gonna call me? I don't really care. Welcome back to World of Tanks. Today we're going to be taking a very quick look at the BZ-75. This is going to be the upcoming Tier 10 Chinese heavy tank that will make its way into World of Tanks starting somewhere in spring of next year. So, the BZ line, we've already seen the Tier 8 premium one, and the very special thing about this tank is that every single one of these vehicles actually has rocket boosters or jet boosters. And these jet boosters, as we have mentioned, actually did exist, and at least the Soviet Union did try out several experiments with T-54s and T-55s with jet boosters. And yeah, who knows if the Chinese did the same, but the Chinese are going to be getting the very first tanks with this kind of new mechanic. So the BZ-75, it comes with two guns, a 180mm gun and a 152mm gun. Both of them pretty crazy if you ask me. The 152mm gun is more, I'd say, it's more reasonable in terms of the caliber. We have a 180mm gun as well in the game with the FV4005. It's a 183mm gun. But still, this is going to be the second largest caliber gun on a tank that is not an SPG. 180 millimeters, that's pretty crazy. So, let's take a look at the very first gun, the 180 millimeter. The first round does 1600 damage, which is going to be the standard shell, and the premium shell is going to do 1050 damage, and it has better penetration. 75 on the standard high explosive shell, and 225 millimeters on the premium shell. Now, the question here is, since high explosive has become such a broken kind of ammunition type and very unreliable against heavily armored targets, I'm not really sure if you want to rely on the 75 millimeters of penetration that you have with the 1600 damage round. Now, intuition is going to be a very important skill on this tank, because when you get the chance to shoot something that is really, really thinly armored, let's say a Guerrilla 15, let's say you have the side of a light tank, maybe a medium tank, you can do 1600 damage. Yeah, that's going to be pretty fucked up. I'm not gonna lie, it's going to be pretty messed up. But 75 millimeters of penetration, that's really going to severely limit your ability to do a lot of damage against tanks that have just a little bit of armor. Now, the reload time, as you can see, is it's atrocious. 30 seconds reloading a single shell. So when you're swapping out the shell, could be like 15 seconds in intuition. When you're using the intuition perk, could be like 15 seconds to switch out the shell. That's crazy when you think about it. Aim time, 3 seconds. It's actually not too bad, but the dispersion 0.4 is actually not too bad either. Like, if you think about the caliber of the gun, it's definitely not supposed to be a derp gun. So 0.4, you can definitely get that down to 0.37, 0.36 probably as well. So it's probably not as bad. It has 8 degrees of gun depression, which is pretty fascinating for a Chinese tank, as I mentioned. 20 degrees of gun elevation, which is also not too bad. And you carry 30 pieces of ammunition. Now, if you're going to be able to use those 30 pieces, probably not, especially since the games are very short nowadays. But yeah, you have 30 pieces of ammunition to run around with. Then there's the second gun, and this gun is more of the conventional gun, as I would put it. And you have 3 shell types, you have AP, you have heat, and you have high explosive. And you can see that the average damage is at 650, which is about the same as the 60 TP, as the E100. I think they're all in the same kind of levels with 650, maybe 750. And yeah, the high explosive shell actually does the most damage, as you'd expect, because it's a high explosive shell with 840 damage. I think this gun is probably going to be used more than the 180mm gun. And only like the biggest troll stars are going to be using the 180mm gun on the BZ-75. So yeah, 258 millimeters of penetration with the AP shell, 319 with the heat shell, which is not that great to be fair, and 90 millimeters with the high explosive shell, which is on the other hand pretty decent, I'd say. 452 millimeter shell. Reload time is okay, 17 seconds until you have a shot inside of your mantlet, inside of your gun, and yeah, aim time 2.7. It's a little bit better, but dispersion is also quite bad, 0.4. Gun depression is the same, you carry the same amount of ammunition, gun elevation is the same, you just have a different kind of gun. So yeah, you have two choices, and I think this is going to be quite interesting. So moving on to mobility, and this is where things become interesting once more, because we have the jet boosters. So 35 kph top speed without using the jet boosters, and 15 kph going in reverse when you don't have the jet boosters on. Now 53 kph when you are using the jet booster, and 1 kph in reverse when you are using the jet booster, which obviously makes sense because the jet boosters are going to boost you forwards, they cannot boost you backwards. It would be really fun if this tank had like boosters pointing towards the front and towards the back. So you can go like forwards and backwards, you can boost like, you know, if you want to go backwards, you can do it like with 40 kph because you have like the boosters on. It'd be really funny. So the engine power is 800 horsepower without the boosters, and with the boosters, it's actually 2,000 horsepower, which is pretty interesting to see. Now, the specific power to weight ratio, as we see from the power, is going to be really, really high when you have the boosters on, but without the boosters, it's only 12.9 horsepower per ton. Now, hull traverse is okay, 30 degrees per second. For a heavy tank, it's okay, but it's in the lower end, definitely, for most of the vehicles. Turret traverse is also quite bad with 24 degrees per second. And you have 6 charges, 10 seconds for a single boost, and the reload time is 5 seconds. So you can do it 6 times. You can charge for 60 seconds in total, and you can probably not turn off the boosters when you're charging. So always be careful and cautious when you're using the boosters. Total hit points 2,500 HP, which is, I'd say, about average for a tier 10 heavy tank. But what is really interesting is going to be the armor layout, because hull armor is 200 millimeters at the front, 110 on the side, 60 at the rear, and it already looks pretty interesting from the front. Now, the turret armor, on the other hand, with 330 millimeters at the front, 165 on the side, and 70 at the back. Question is, are there any weak spots? I see a cupola. I spot a cupola right there. It looks very prominent, and it might be a weak spot. I am hoping that it is a weak spot. But this is all we know so far. I think this is going to be really ridiculous. 1,600 damage with a single shot with a tank that has armor. This might just be a very dangerous tank to add into World of Tanks in the year 2022. Or 2023. It's coming in 2023. I'm not sure if it's a good idea, but we'll have to see on a super test. This sounds like a KV2 player's wet dream. Like, every KV2 player has wished the KV2 to be faster, has wished the KV2 to hit harder, and this is basically it, right? So, I'm not really sure if this is going to be a good thing or a bad thing. Either way, hope you guys enjoy this video. As always, comment, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys on the next one. What do you think of the BZ-75? I think Wargaming are playing with a lot of fire right now, and they're trying to put new things into the game, which is great and all. I like that. But it's quite dangerous to add things into the game that, you know, use the high explosive mechanism and have this new jet booster, and it just combines a lot of things that I deem to be a bit dangerous. Obviously, 225 millimeters of penetration is not going to be like the end of the world. You're still going to be bouncing, you're still not going to be doing like massive amounts of damage on certain tanks that are very heavily armored at tier 10. But, you know, every once in a while, the light tanks that you do spot, or the medium tanks that you will be able to flank, they're going to be in for a pounding. But 30 seconds reload time, don't forget that. 30 seconds is a very long time. That's only like 19 seconds less than the Waffenträger E100 reload. But that thing has no armor. So imagine this thing going up against the Waffenträger E100. Oh my god. Oh, I don't even think I don't even want to think about that.